I don't usually have guests on here, but when I do, they're people who have truly helped me. People whose presence, work, and energy left an imprint on my life. There are some people who carry a kind of quiet power in the spaces they hold. And Carson Mayer is one of them. She's a doula, a guide, and someone who has devoted herself to honoring the sacredness of birth, of womanhood, and of becoming. Carson brings softness, strength, and deep wisdom into one of the most tender seasons of life, motherhood. She's the founder of Sea and the Moon and has supported countless of women through birth with presence and intuition. Her new book, Growing Together, is a beautiful invitation to reimagine pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood with reverence and intention. But today, we're not just going to talk about what she does. We're leaning into how she sees the world and how she helps others remember their own wisdom. I'm so grateful you're here, Carson.
Oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. Thank you. I am so grateful to be here, and just your like love and light radiates through the screen, and I feel like I just want to reach in and hug you, and I'm so glad we get some
I
time.
know. I'm so like if I were to see you, you're one of those people that I would just immediately hug and feel like I don't know, I saw you yesterday, though we've only met virtually. And I was just saying prior to starting to the recording is that I really don't know what I would have done without the course that I attended with you. And I know there's many books and courses and stuff, but there was something every time I tuned in into that circle that you opened, there was something so like even my husband noticed every single time the call ended, I always felt resourced and less overwhelmed, especially as a new mom. So yeah, there's something there. There's something there. If and I recommend this to to everybody, to anybody that I know that wants to have a child. And I want to start this off by saying, what drew you into birth work?
First, I want to say thank you, and I'm always in awe of the women that the circle brings together, because that's why we call it growing together. I mean, it's as
Yeah.
much the other women, you, and just what all of you have brought and continue to bring to the community that makes it what it is. So I wish I could take on more credit, except for the fact that I'm so grateful to have built something and to have like attracted some of the most spectacular mothers and women and just human beings who have made growing together what it is. So my journey to a doula started when I was 22, which was pretty young for a doula. Most people, I think, pursue this path maybe after they've had their own children. Some are inspired by their own birth experience. I I like to say it actually started when I was born, because I believe that our births, there's an imprinting that takes place that we may not remember consciously, but we remember in our bodies. And I believe it really shapes who we become, who we are, and often what we want to do with our lives. And so my mother's birth with me, I think, had a big part of it, which I
Mhm.
wasn't fully conscious of or aware of until I started to learn more about that later on. But when I was in college, I was living in New York, and I somehow watched the documentary The Business of Being Born. And I don't remember if it was assigned in a class or why I watched it. But prior to watching that, like many women in the United States, had gotten sex ed
Mhm.
and learned how not to get pregnant, learned to be very afraid of what our bodies are capable of. And that was it. And I had this, fear as a young woman of not just getting pregnant, but even looking forward to a time where I wanted to have a child. I was still terrified of the prospect of it and felt
Mhm.
completely disempowered and disembodied, just in the thought of it alone. And so when I saw The Business Being Born, it was this huge aha moment for me where I got to see unscripted birth for the very first time. Birth that was not the Hollywood depiction, the legs flailing in the air, the, blood and screaming gore, like just real birth, home birth, hospital birth, but birth that was empowering. Birth that
Mhm.
was women led. And that blew my mind. And I felt like, I was like, when was anyone going to tell me about this? Like, when was I going to have this curriculum to unlearn the conditioning and fear? I realized that was never going to come, unless I sought it out myself, which is what I did. And then, yeah, the other part of me was just completely horrified to learn about the birth in the United States and our maternal mortality rates, and just how our culture had turned birth into this illness and the disservice that we were doing to mothers and babies as a result. And so that was where it kind of all began.
Because there's something that you asked, and when we started the circle, you were something on the lines of like, what do you know about birth? And I remember that so vividly because I remember how it made me feel, that question, how it made me feel. And as somebody that is in the line of like embodiment and somatics, and when you just asked the question, I just felt like petrified. Like all I know is this is going to be excruciating.
Yeah.
And it's so, I don't know how to explain it other than it feels so cold in my body. As somebody that worked in a hospital, I was a nurse, an ER nurse for 2.5 years, and it was everything was very dramatic, and everything is happening to you versus with you.
Yeah.
And I remember there's no communication. There's just like the protocol, the same protocol goes for every woman. And like you said, when you gave us that as homework and I watched the documentary, I remember just sitting there with my husband and we're like, oh my God, like how everything, and it's not that, again, I loved how you really clearly stated it's not about we're anti any hospital intervention, because it's definitely important and needed for some cases, but not all cases, not all births should be treated equally, like in the sense of like not everything is an emergency. This is not an illness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that there's ways to utilize those interventions to approach an emergency, or for women who want to utilize those interventions in a way that honors the woman's choice body, and that all birth, no matter how it happens, is still a sacred event. It's still a huge rite of passage, and a day that I say, has a real potential to make or break the early motherhood experience. Because when we're spending early motherhood trying to deal with trauma and untangle that experience, I mean, women are so resilient and they do it, and it is possible, but it's already hard enough work as it is to just integrate and navigate as a new mother without that.
Do you feel a difference since you entered the field? I'm sure, like, how many years has it been now?
It's been almost 10.
Do you feel like there is a change? There's a shift happening from more of, I don't know, like, how would you call it when you first started versus now?
Yeah, I definitely have a bias because I'm so in the world. My algorithm is all birth and it's what I do. And so for me, it seems like there's a lot of, openness and curiosity around it. But I also realize that I'm attracting that and that I'm in the spaces with women who are curious about that. But I definitely noticed a shift actually during COVID when that was actually really widely talked about, because and during that time, here at least, doulas were taken out of the hospital.
Yes.
Partners, husbands, fathers were taken out of the hospital. And so a lot of women who were really comfortable with hospital birth, really comfortable with the intervention and just kind of going blindly through that direction, all of a sudden were like, wait, I just want my husband at least. Like I can't even have that.
Yeah.
Or I just really want my doula. And that, I think, woke a lot of women up to being like, wait, that doesn't make sense, and this is not what feels supportive to me. And so a lot of women had curiosity around home birth for the first time who would have never explored that option. Many switched and many didn't, but even just the fact that it opened their mind to being like, I never thought I'd be on the phone with a midwife asking about this, but now I am. And so I definitely saw a shift there, and we do know that like there was an increase in home birth around that time.
Wow. Because again, the idea of home birth, I feel like there is something, well, in our area, like in the Middle East, there is, I don't know anyone aside from, okay, so, and maybe it's the same in the States, where there came a generation where, I don't know, it was 2 generations or one, like where everything just shifted to the hospital, and the concept of home births became something very, not just tabooed, but even frowned upon. Like there's something so looked down on even.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting because it's really, at least here, like only in the past 100 or so years has hospital birth even been a thing.
Yeah.
Most of human history has been home birth. But it's amazing how just in a century there's been so much stigma attached to it. And it's really been like reserved for something that's just for the crunchiest of moms.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like there is, when you said the concept of initiation, like there is something that has been taken away from women. And it is, I don't know if there's even something to describe the experience other than what's taken away. There is no language for it. Like the experience after, like if you ask me now, I'm sure everybody, the way that they describe their birth is very, very different, but I couldn't have imagined it any other way. And I remember, yes, being able to having that time, even not immediately rushing to the hospital, and having that time at home is so important. And just that you have another sounding voice, somebody next to you saying, we don't need to jump to the hospital right now. And there's so many powerful there's a lot of information that we need to get into, and that's why I highly recommend joining the course that you do. But yeah, it's definitely a place to, it's something to strongly consider. And I know, because there's so many, everybody around, like everybody in my circle thought this was very odd. That's why I kept it very, I don't want to say secretive, but I just kept it to myself because I didn't want a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
So just like keeping it, like I needed to just keep it, like hush hush, and like I want to do it this way, because I can imagine everybody's like projecting their worries on you, like out of fear, out of worry, out of love.
Yeah. I talk about this in my book. I have a whole chapter on like the bubble of peace. And that when you're pregnant, especially when you become visibly pregnant, even strangers feel entitled to sharing their opinion with you, or their horror story, or their, sometimes it's beautiful advice or wisdom, but that is something so interesting, culturally, is like when you see a pregnant, and I feel it too. I mean, I see a pregnant woman and I'm like, I want to tell her all these things, and like, oh, but it can be a blessing that the world kind of stops and everybody it feels like attracted and magnetized to the power that she's holding, and the miracle that she is in. But yeah, then it also comes with the really important need to strengthen those boundaries and to keep things sacred, because not everything belongs to everybody else.
100%. And you are right. The need of even the unsolicited advice. It's just
Yeah.
like constant advice giving and not really listening, and like really
Yeah.
trusting the mother. It's
Yeah.
like the need to, that happened quite a lot. You've worked for so many women. Like I can imagine that amount of women that you've worked with. What do you think is the common thread in what mothers truly need during this season, if there is?
I think something that's definitely become even more clear to me as a mother, and then something that the circles have shown, is community is such an important part of this process that I think has just been taken out of how we mother
Yeah.
today in a large part. And even though the community that I've created is mostly virtual, I do think there's just so much power in that, and the support of those around them, which can look like community, or finding the community that feels in line and supportive to you. And so everybody's needs are different, but at their core, I think it's all very similar,
Yeah.
right? And um yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. The sense of community. And I think that's what it is. It's less of all it's not like there's no advice giving, but it's like it's just feeling that you're part of a group of women that we believe in each other and trust each other. And which connects to the next question that I have for you is, how do you support women in trusting their intuition in a world that is constantly asking them to outsource that?
Yeah. And I love what you said. It is like we just want to feel less, I think, alone in it.
Yeah.
And that can help, leading into your next question with intuition too, because I do think we all, no matter how in touch we are with our intuition, our, inner voice, or whatever you want to call it, I think we all at times struggle with
Yeah.
the inner and outer knowing. And I have a chapter in my book that's all about this. And I help women. One of the activities in the book is just kind of starting by just being aware of where the messages are coming from, right? Just as you said, like, okay, is this my mother-in-law's, fear about home birth? Or is this the woman from the grocery store that I'm thinking about? Is this my own fear coming from within? Is this something that, is a story from my childhood? And just like categorizing, recognizing, noticing where all of these stories come from and where the messaging comes from. And that's why, your work is so important too. And then noticing the ones that really are felt in the body, like if they're felt in the head, and just kind of paying attention to that. not as necessarily a way of saying this is right or this is wrong, validating all of it, noticing that they're all there and they're all part of your decision making. But I think that there's something so important in noticing which ones are coming out of fear
Yeah.
and which ones are not. And that intuition doesn't necessarily mean like trusting your intuition or trusting birth and trusting your body and trusting your baby. That doesn't mean neglecting asking for help. That doesn't mean not seeking medical advice. That doesn't mean, doing things all by yourself and having no fear. It means listening and following through on whatever you need, and then checking in and like moment by moment being present with what that information is giving you, and then acting from that place.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
'cause I struggle with it too, right? It can be so, this trust your intuition can feel so intimidating in some ways, right? Like we're like an oracle and we have this
I
one
love that. Yeah.
answer. And that's not how it is. I think we're just all human beings in process, and it's about sifting through and just making sure that you're honoring what is coming from the inside just as much as what's coming from the out.
Yeah, because it could definitely be overwhelming. And I feel like as somebody that one of the things that I find very triggering is like, oh, just connect to your intuition, make the decision. I'm like, but
Yeah.
I can't, I don't know what if like if I've lived most of my life disconnected from my body, honestly. And
Yeah.
that's how I'm getting reintroduced. And even in the past 10 years, there's things where I know certain things feel like a yes. And there's certain things where I'm just very, very confused. And especially if it's your first pregnancy and everything is brand new, like you won't be
Yeah.
able, like you said, like really, yeah, the fact that if I know I can ask for help from people that are not going, that are truly listening and
Yeah.
allowing and maybe reconnecting me back
Yeah.
to the wisdom that is there, that just like you said needs sifting through, yeah, and being, again, connecting that back to community, being amongst women and just hearing. Sometimes I'm like just listening to other women's experiences, even mothers that are second time mothers or third time mothers. All of them were saying how each pregnancy was different,
Yeah.
so
Everything. Yeah. Each moment is different. I had a situation kind of recently that it wasn't around birth, but it really was I was so grateful for the experience for
mm,
myself and for my work. My daughter had croup, which is like this cough that really, really, really sounds so scary because it inflames the airways. So they go, like they have
yeah,
this labored breathing. And in the middle of the night, I was like, I'm taking her to the emergency room, which for me, like that's not something I take lightly. And I really prefer to address things holistically and to not, um, you know, intervene in that way. But that was, I was really like, is this my fear? Is this my intuition? What, there was those feelings coming up in me. Like, am I just panicking? Is this a message that I really need to do this? And I made the decision. I said, this is what we're doing. And we got there and her oxygen was fine. Like she was okay. And
yeah,
instead of being like, oh, I didn't listen to, I took that was wrong. I was like, no, this was exactly what I needed
yeah,
to check in. And it felt great. And we were so fortunate that we had amazing doctors there that exactly what you said, listened and provided me with the information, because that's what my intuition was needing. It was wanting to gather more information.
yes,
That's what it was saying. Gather more information so that you can continue to make decisions. And then when I got there and had that information, the answer was so clear for me. Right.
mm,
And so bringing this back to birth, it's very different from birth, but just it's all connected. It's like, just because you choose, okay, I'm gonna, do this test or do this intervention or take this route, doesn't mean you give up your all choice and all of your, intuition or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just thinking of it as gathering an information. And like you said, using that support team, and then having that bring you back to the present. Oh, I actually might not need an induction because I'm learning that in this moment, everything's okay.
and I feel I just want to bring in the concept, like even our partners, because when we would say in our like burning, is it, when you watch a movie, you don't want somebody to tell
Oh,
you,
yeah, yeah, ruining surprise or something. No,
like,
you can share. You can share.
but like when we one of the sessions where we had our partners join in the course that I took with you, and having my husband there and having my husband during my birth, like honestly, I don't know how some women do it without that sense of, I like, I don't know, I feel like I'm gonna cry just thinking
Mhm.
about that, and not having my partner like really, because in the midst of things, which we're gonna talk about, I love the example of Apollo and
Yeah,
how do you
Artemis. Yeah,
Artemis, that example, because when you're in, there's a phase where I went offline
yeah.
fully,
Laborland.
Laborland, and he was my everything. Like I had a doula, and he was more than my doula throughout the whole process. And when I felt like there was a part in me that like comes out and like freaks out for a bit, that he was the force that just
Mm,
held the
yeah.
space for me, you know? And I just feel like in the midst of all of this, just to have somebody with you that can remind you and help ground you, and because again, it's difficult to be connected to your intuition the whole time. We're humans. We're humans, and I just want to demystify the whole. Oh my God, I'm just gonna even birth. Like I definitely know people that the way they talk about their birth is so magical, and it's not like my birth was not magical. It definitely had its magical moments, but there was many parts where I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
No, I mean, and doubt and fear, that's another thing. Obviously, my books, my class, I really hope that people walk away with less fear
Yeah,
and with awareness around where the fear is coming from and, able to step into birth with a lot more confidence and courage. And those feelings are so normal and such a natural, healthy part of doing anything for the first time, even if it's your 10th baby, first time birthing this baby.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter how many times you birth, like those always come up. I remember working with a mom who on her sixth birth, and at the time I didn't have, I wasn't a mother yet. And I remember just being like, well, you've had six. Like, why are you nervous? Like, I was just kind of writing off everything because I was like, she's done this so many times. Like, and it was so humbling for me. And I just was so grateful that she reminded me this. But she was like, every time is so scary and different. Like, you go back into the portal. And now that I've done it, I really have an understanding of that. And as we think about our next baby, I'm like, oh, it's kind of even more humbling the second time because you're like, I know the depths that you go. Like when you have gone through it, like the second time can actually bring up even more worries for people than the first. The first time you go in with the ignorance as bliss, right? Feeling you can
yeah.
prepare, but you're like, I got this. And then the second time you're like, I am signing up to be brought to my knees again and again and again. And yeah, so I love that you're saying that because it's so normal and healthy to walk in that way and to also keep going.
Oh my gosh, Carson. Oh my gosh. Ah, your book is called Growing Together. I'm obsessed with the name, which is such a beautiful phrase. Can you share what those words mean to you?
Yeah, so it means a lot. Obviously, the mom and the baby um, growing together. The part of it that I think is really truly my favorite in the title and in the name of the group is this aspect that we are all growing together, and myself included.
Yeah.
Right? It's all the mothers in the group, the mother and the baby, but really, I include myself in that. I grow with each client. I learned so much with each client. I actually say with each birth I attend, I know less about birth
Yeah.
because um, every time it challenges whatever box you want to put it in, any belief you want to have about around it, anything you just want to like create some sort of generalization about the process. But every birth is unique, and each one is going to help you unlearn something
Yeah.
to hopefully bring you more to like a beginner's mind. And so I love growing together as the title for my book because so much of my book is my experience, and I really show, not from like teacher student but more like student student.
Yeah.
This was my growth experience, this was my experience growing together, and this is my experience of really bringing in all of the growth that all of you who have been part of the circle have afforded me.
That's the thing. And I feel like the more I talk to women, a lot of people have been asking me, Hanan, share your birth story, share your birth story. And I feel like I've been really keeping it. I'm just holding it in for a while because where I come from, I don't know anyone aside like from my grandmother, because and then everything just suddenly stopped. And it's not just foreign; it's actually looked at very strange that you're considering to have a home birth. Or and where I'm living in the Netherlands currently, home birth is quite common. It's
Yeah.
very it's more than, I forgot the percentage, but it's like 40% of women within that. It's a
Wow.
big percentage that,
Wow.
yeah. And you don't go to a hospital
Yeah.
when you're pregnant. You go to a midwife. So the
Yeah.
concept of midwife is not really common as well.
Yeah.
So I know when I chose to go down this path, going down the home birth path, I was actually having sessions with an amazing guide. Her name is Ali Afstadal. I just had a podcast with her that's going to be launching soon. She's the one who recommended you to me.
Did she just move to Asheville?
I don't know if she did, actually. I know she lives in Topanga.
Okay.
Well, I'll send you her account. So she's the one I wouldn't have known about if it
I
wasn't for
know
her.
her or like from Instagram, but not.
Yeah. She when she recommended you, it was like 3 days, and then you were holding one of the growing together circle, and I immediately signed up. And it's not like there is something that, well, obviously you're doing such a big decision. I always give myself the opportunity, because again, you could choose to give birth at a birthing center. It's part of the hospital. But I gave myself options. I was like, Hanan, you have options. You don't have to just stick to home birth. Every session I attended with you in the circle, and even going through your book, I just feel like there's something about this that just is more than a guide of how to do things. This is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually less steps and more. I don't even. I find myself even not knowing how to explain this. You just, you're able to feel like, I want a map. Most people are like, just tell me what to do, tell me what to do. But the
Yeah.
truth is, it's like this
There's,
experience is less control. And I would
yeah.
love for you to speak about the Apollo and Artemis. Am I saying it right? Yeah, yeah,
Yes. And there is no step by step because it's like, it's just this process is so unique and individual to everyone. The story of Artemis and Apollo is something that Britta Bushnell in her wonderful book talks about. And something that I learned from her that I've found to be, I think, one of the most useful metaphors and ways to talk about birth in a way that really helps people no matter what their like inclination around
yeah,
or assumptions of birth, or if they kind of fancy themselves more medical person or a science driven person or more intuitive, wherever they like identify, can
yeah,
see these archetypes and talk about birth through these characters. And so then, and Britta's way of speaking of it is far more eloquent. But my, I guess, interpretation of it is just that Apollo and Artemis are twins, twin
mm,
brother and sister, and Artemis helps birth her brother. She's the twin that's birthed first, and then helps Apollo be born. And through that has become, she is known as the goddess of childbirth. And I always kind of start by saying, when we hear Apollo and Artemis, which word are you more familiar with? And most everyone has heard of Apollo,
mhm,
but not many have heard of Artemis. And I think that that's interesting to note because in most cultures there is more of a connection to the archetype of Apollo, who's the god of light, of the sun, of time, of science and data and structure, and all of the things that we put a lot of emphasis in the
yeah,
Western world. How we believe we can attain certainty and safety is through those things,
yeah,
things we can grasp and see and quantify and research. Artemis, on the other hand, twin sister, is like the yin to the yang, the totally, other side of the coin, and is the goddess of the wild, of the hunt, of love, of sex, of birth, of intimacy, of intuition, of things that we can't wrap our hands around, things that we can't always see in front of us or count, within the Artemisian world. There is no concept of time. There is no language. It all surpasses that. And so I think it's really helpful to recognize that birth exists within the Artemisian.
yeah.
And by nature, we are also Apollonian beings, as we're using language to communicate, and we, met at a certain time and we're on our computers. And it's not about removing the Apollonian. It's about finding balance and reverence for the Artemisian.
And I think that's what, there was a part of me, like, as much as I hope there's a lot of talk of like the masculine and the feminine, right? It's like, oh, I want to be more in my feminine, but in a world that like demands us to be more in our masculine, right? So, and I get it. Like, there's apps for everything, and I remember it's not like, oh, we shouldn't use apps like to help us count, I don't know, the contractions and all, but I felt like when the contraction started, there was a part of me that wanted to control, like came out just like, okay, let's let's start counting and math and I just remember sitting there thinking, the last thing I want to do right now is not just not count, but like, I don't want to get into this where I could feel somatically. I can feel it in my throat. I can feel it on my collarbone and my shoulders. Like, that's this tense part when this experience right now needs me to soften.
Yeah. The timing, I'm so glad you bring that up because that's such a perfect example of how we can get stuck in the Apollonian. And I see it with partners a lot too.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts, but they love the apps because, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
my beloved is like, in this deep, deep Artemian place. I'm scared, I'm nervous. And there's an app for this, and I can look at a number and I can click a button and it gives me something to do. But what I notice when I'm in the birth space, when the dad is taking on that role, is that he is not being present. He is not actually in the process.
Yeah.
He's not just like, oh, he's looking at his phone, but he's waiting for this device to give him some sort of answer. When the irony is that it's so clear where the mother is in labor, if we just ask her or tune into her and notice and like let her show us. And so there's a time and place for those numbers and those rhythms to check in with them. But I do think that there's so much value in putting it down. So the partner can actually be present with what the mother needs, which is probably not a lot more than just the button clicking and timing. There's
Yeah.
so much more that needs to be there. And as you so beautifully kind of described in your birth, just like holding that steady presence and even just making eye contact and showing like I'm here with you right now in a fearless state of readiness to hold you in whatever you need and to like allow your fears to take up the space, but also not to, when those apps say time to go to the hospital or you're here, we then forget to check in sometimes with what is actually happening in front of us. And I've seen those formulas fail more time than most in actually telling us where the labor is.
There's something, I don't know if you remember saying this or not, but it's something that I live by now. And you said something that the birth pain is not bigger than you. And I kid you not, Carson, that's the way I remember hearing it for the first time and picking up the phone, actually telling when the course was done, I picked up the phone to one of my friends and I told her that. And I was like, and it's something that I repeated to myself often prior to giving birth. And then when the birth, like, again, one of the reasons why I don't talk about birth, well, my birth, is because it's not like I want to scare anyone. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be very, I don't know, not just trauma informed, but like really cautious of how I share this experience, because there was a point where I don't know, like I felt like I experienced hell and back, you know? And it was excruciating. And then I'm like, the one thing that was, I kept repeating to myself is, this is not bigger than me. This is not bigger than me. And yes, I do feel like I'm in.
Die.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
die.
that's okay.
I'm gonna die.
Back up.
But and then that's why a lot of women tell me that, why would you do this? Why would you feel this? Why would you go about this? And I'm just like, because I don't have I don't know how to explain why I chose this, and I don't know how we could. I would love for you to maybe help explain, put into words, why would we choose this route?
Yeah, I know. And for those who haven't spent a lot of time maybe understanding and learning about or reflecting on birth, their birth, them giving birth, or just the hormones of it and all of it, it's a really good question, right?
Yeah.
And you hear doctors say it all the time, like, don't be a hero, or like, why would you do this? And it's it's coming from a place of innocence and I think, well, good intentions, but a big misunderstanding in my opinion of the why. I really don't believe that women are doing it for out of like martyrdom or ego. For me, and I guess I'll just speak from myself, it comes from an understanding of the hormones and the process of labor. So from, less of a sensation standpoint of knowing that with physiological birth, or a birth that is undisturbed by intervention, that I actually believe is a safer birth, right? Because this is how the hormones have known how to operate and how our bodies have known how to birth since the beginning of time, and have done so really well. And when we add an intervention, be it pain management, induction, again, of course, there's a time and place for it, and I've seen them be utilized really well in labor, but we run the risk of interrupting the symphony of hormones that can lead to a greater cascade intervention. So that's one, I guess a short answer to a more complex reason. And there's so much more there to be unpacked, but that's one. And I also think, for a lot of people, we birth how we live. And so some people are like the tiniest little headache, we have an Advil, and like, I don't want to be in that. And so for me, that's not how I approach things in my life and my health. And so it wouldn't make sense to me to approach it through birth either. And then so there's that. There was the desire to just allow my body to do what I knows how to do. The desire to avoid a major narcotic. In the States, it's fentanyl and morphine are the epidural, is what's put into the epidural. A lot of people don't know that, right? We say epidural, and I think women just assume they put epidural in my back. Epidural is the name of the mechanism used to deliver the drugs, but it's fentanyl and it's or morphine, and sometimes both, right? And those are things that, again, I think I've seen epidural be a wonderful tool for women, and for those who want it, they're generally lower risk than some of the other options. And it is localized, but it is still going through your body. It is absolutely still passing through your placenta, and these are medications that we wouldn't really give a woman through pregnancy, and medications that I would have a lot of discernment taking in for myself, not pregnant, and so not something that I would want to introduce in pregnancy. And so those are just like, I guess, my more heady answers to your question. I know you're speaking to more of the maybe the spiritual aspect of the why. So that's just one part of what was my why. And then the feeling of it, like, why would you sign up to feel this when there are options not to? And I think that there's a lot that we can access through that sensation and through that depth of hell, if you want to call it, that we can go to claim on our way to motherhood. And I just want to say, for anybody who's listening who did have an epidural or a cesarean or whatever your birth was, it still requires the same amount of strength, and you still go on your hero's journey to claim whatever is needed. And there's no easy way through birth, epidural or not. And that's something I've also had a really unique privilege of being able to witness, is just because you have an epidural doesn't mean you don't go on your hero's journey. It's still hard work, just a different type. But I think that, some describe birth as like, it's like a drug, right? The oxytocin, the endorphins that are rushing through you. It's our birthright as women to feel the full extent of what it means to be in the human body when we feel the sensations of labor. And I just think there's something really interesting in that. And also for our children, when they come into the world fully feeling, I'm curious what that means, right? For them too. And we have so much fear around feeling, be it emotional and physical. And I don't have to tell you this, but it's embodiment to like fully feel the full extent. And that was something I remember. And I know you're being so mindful of not scaring people, but I I actually am the first to be like really raw and real about birth, because I actually think it helps women not feel afraid when they're in it or feel like there's something wrong with them, because it is so big. And I think hypnobirth and uh, orgasmic birth can kind of, I think there's so much value in that, but I also think sometimes it sets people up for being like, wait, I'm doing this wrong. There's something wrong with me. I'm supposed to be having an orgasm right now,
Yeah.
or I'm supposed to be like oming. Like this is not that.
No.
And I just want to say, as I was a doula for many, many years before I gave birth myself, and you would not have known that if you were watching my birth. I was screaming all the profanities. Give me an epidural. Give me to the hospital. I was in a home. I had the most incredible home birth. In retrospect, I couldn't ask for a more perfect birth. But holy shit, I mean, there was no orgasm, no oming. I was screaming bloody murder. I think I bit my poor husband. But that in itself, and I write about this in my book, that is so healing. And I think for women who have been told to, not to, stay quiet, not scare anyone with your big feelings and emotions, to, to be allowed to fully express the magnitude of the situation, which, holy shit, you're bringing a child into the world. I always say birth meets how serious that is
Mm-hmm.
and how earth-shattering it is,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a death of the old self that happens, and with that death comes a rebirth. And so yeah, birth is fucked up hard because there's parts of you that are dying, and you are like a portal for life. It is so big. And I think by design, it's big so that we're able to like really meet it where it's at. And for me, that was really important.
Oh my God, mic drop, Carson. I don't like what? Like, this is why I was so excited about this episode. And I think this is, you don't understand the amount of women that need to hear this. You don't. Like, I'm sure in your neck of the woods, like, this is quite common, but where I come from, this is. And if I could somewhat help any woman out there that's maybe, I don't know, with social media now, there's a few accounts and that are sharing more. And, like we just need a reminder. We just need like somebody to just like, even if it's a subtle voice to say, you can do this, like, because it is odd. It is odd. I remember being in the hospital and, so yeah, of course, C-section, cesareans is extremely common. Even if you sit down with your doctor and it's you're most likely gonna be, it's the weekend, let's rush this, and it's immediately going to be considered some sort of an emergency that's going on. And it's very odd that women in the birth ward are all after, literally they just gave birth, they're all dolled up.
Mm.
There's literally somebody there to do their hair for them.
Wow.
And there's balloons outside of the door.
Yeah.
And like, and she's sitting there holding her baby, greeting guests. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine right when I gave birth, like, and a few hours later, I'm sitting there with makeup on, having to greet guests because guests now want to come and meet the baby. And I'm like, how is this happening? There's so many women that I know are reaching out. They're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be forced into this. And I'm thinking, like, literally when I gave birth, my son came out and I'm so blessed that this happened. I know that he latched on and I was feeding him and I wanted to be in this cocoon and I didn't want to see anyone, no one. I didn't even want to see my family right then. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't see your family. Of course not. Like, for me personally, this is what I needed. I needed to be my husband and I and my son just cocooned. That was my need. And whatever, I'm sure there's so many women out there that just want to be validated, be like, yeah, I actually want that too. That doesn't make me a bad
No,
person or selfish or
no.
that. No, you're not selfish.
I'm like covered in chills because for you to own that and to create that and do that, just how healing that is, I think, for the women who came before you, and obviously for your son to get that experience. And I love that you shared that because that was a big part of my healing through my birth, because my mom had very much what you described. I don't think she was like, getting makeup on, but I think my dad invited like every person in his office to come, to come meet me.
Yeah.
And after, like, people, my sisters, love them so much, but like had their boyfriends, their high school boyfriends. I have older sisters at the labor, right? And there was this feeling, and I write about in the book, where my mom, when it was she couldn't, even in this moment, give up being a good stepmom, a good
Yeah.
wife, a good mother, a good daughter, a good friend, a good everything, right? To
Yeah.
make other people around her happy at the expense of the mother baby dyad or her own birth experience. And
Yeah.
that's so reflective of both of our cultures,
Yeah.
that like there is this emphasis of, yet still, as you bring life forward, and in the fourth trimester, which is still considered, should be considered part of this portal, the expectation to be making others happy with you is still so strong.
I feel like if any woman is just listening to this and she's just intrigued, just like, oh, I don't know what, like, by the way, this could sound like gibberish to many people that are listening to this right now. And I get it. I get it. Like, you would have asked me, I would be like, what are you talking about? Why would I go through all of this when
Yeah,
there is a solution for this, when there's something that can numb all of this?
yeah,
But I feel like I loved when you said that most of us, and let's be very honest, we are afraid to feel, and it's part of our like genetic makeup is to like protect ourselves. But there are certain things that if we don't feel them, like if they don't really open us up, like there's this sense of, and I feel like this is where it's difficult to explain. There's something that literally cracks open throughout
yeah,
this experience, and I feel like what a shame that you don't allow yourself to just at least tap into it just for a bit,
yeah,
and allow this power, allow this divinity to like just move through you.
yeah.
um which leads me to like just a couple more questions here is if birth was a teacher, what do you think it's trying to teach the world right now?
Mm, what a great question. There's a great quote by Michelle Odent that says, "To change the world, we must begin with birth." And yeah, I think it's so powerful. And obviously, there's so many ways I could have a whole podcast on on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that there's a lot of healing potential in women speaking up for what they need around birth, honoring that inner voice, inner wisdom, for not seeing their bodies or themselves as broken. I think so many of the things we've talked about around pain is so powerful and healing. And then our connection with our children. I
Mm.
think there's such an exciting time where people are starting to have this conversation on a more wide scale, and look at maybe the ways that parenting existed in more recent generations, and how there's a more of a return to connection and compassion and seeing our children as human beings as well.
Mm.
And I really love and am really interested in the idea of seeing motherhood start far before birth. And
Mm.
so pregnancy as motherhood, and recognizing the baby as in the womb as
Mm.
experiencing. And we know that they're born not as a blank slate, but already with so much imprinting and memory and wisdom and knowing. And I think that there's something there in the healing in that connection for all of us, and knowing that maybe like some of the things that we experience now as adults can even be like predated from our birthdays.
Mhm.
um, and understanding that our mother's stress, our father's stress, and our grandmothers and those before us are all part of who we are here today. And that doesn't have to be some terrible thing like, oh, now I'm having to untangle all of that, but like how exciting, and actually hopefully give a little bit more self-compassion too.
Wow. The fact, just remind me, do you do doula courses?
Oh yeah, I do mentor doulas as well. I do like one a year
I
usually.
don't know. I feel like there's so many women that are going to be listening to this that will be like, huh, I
Yeah,
wonder.
I have one open in a few months. I don't know when this will air, but
Because you have, I'm gonna, this is gonna, I'm gonna have it translated actually in Arabic, and I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited for this, and I'm gonna. You have your doula courses. You have well, I'm gonna share your Instagram account, and your book is. I feel like even if it should be a gift, you should just have this, even if you're not planning to have children. This should just be in your home. It should be, I don't know, like an essential in your home. And I just the impact that you're having on the world, Carson, like you really need to understand, like I'm sure you do, and I'm sure so many mothers have told you this, but the impact that you've had on me, my husband, my son, like do you understand how pivotal, like how ground, like breaking, like you are healing generational trauma. You know
oh,
what I mean? And I feel like as somebody that was born as an emergency C-section, because I had the umbilical cord around my neck, and I remember just hearing like, oh, that's not really much an emergency, like, oh, that's your course, your book. Like, please, if you are hesitant, just before making any decisions, I've learned is not to give our power away, to make informed decisions. Just like allow yourself to educate yourself. And there's something, when I learned the meaning of the word educate means to lead out. Allow yourself to be led, like lead yourself. Like, and I feel like we just take anymore. Again, I'm not anti anything about modern medicine is providing us. It's amazing in many scenarios, but we just, like you said, take an Advil. In our area, where we come from, it's a Panadol. We just, and but we don't even know the side effects of these things. We just take it because it's like, oh, this little magic pill that will make things disappear. But I don't want to understand the root cause of why this is coming. Yeah. This is information that's coming through.
100%. And that's the part. It's not about being like, oh, I'm just going to sit with this pain because the martyr mentality. It's like, what is this? Because I believe kind of like a whack-a-mole, we just can Advil it in one place, it's going to come up somewhere else, right? And so it's all messages. And I know we're ending, but we were talking about this before you pressed record.
Yeah.
You record because it's, to me, very connected. And I feel like this is you kind of led us, I think, unintentionally back to this conversation, but we were talking about eczema.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 26, 25, mid-20s, out of nowhere, I was already eating so healthy. I already had a clean skincare line. I was always very conscious around all of, the microbiome. Eczema came up. Horrible eczema came up all over my body. The dermatologist would be, here's some steroid creams, here's this, right? And then my more health, natural-minded self had all of the answers or remedies that I wanted to use. But the real thing that I think was the most important to look at, of where and why it came up, my parents were separating. My entire life and everything I knew of my family was crumbling. And the skin is, our whole body's there to tell messages, but the skin is really a way that doesn't let you ignore, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when vanity comes into it, that. I always feel like the skin stuff can be the hardest and the greatest gift, because you really won't let you ignore it. And it was through gaps, which was what we were talking about, that I was able to better heal my gut and not have eczema again. But I really believe it was only through acknowledging and addressing that it wasn't solely a physical symptom, but more one that came from an emotional stressor, and what in German medicine is called a separation conflict, that I was able to come to terms with that and then heal it.
But honestly, everything does stem.
Yeah.
It does stem. It doesn't just out of nowhere. Oh, I just woke up and I had this. These symptoms start from something. It does start from there's something else. There's a stress. There is something that the body is giving us, sharing. It's responding to something.
Yeah. And isn't it wild that this is such a radical thing? That I always, sometimes when I say things like that, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm nuts. And then you're like, why? Why would they think I'm nuts? Our body, how have we disconnected the mind, the body, the experience of being in this body, of being human, of stress, of feeling? How have we separated it so much that something that simple and obvious seems completely woo? When we stress is well studied, and doctors will be the first to tell you got to work with your stress, right? But we put stress in this box that it's like, oh, it only looks like this. And then when you talk about it as emotion and as life experience, all of a sudden it's invalid.
I just want to say something to this, because truly in the work that we do, or that I share, is that when we say, oh, we're just trapped in the mind, what does that really mean? It's like this, there is this disconnect from our bodies. And when we say disconnect from our bodies, it's like when I could be sitting in a position, it's as simple as that, and I could be actually feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I don't even know that I'm feeling uncomfortable, because that's there's this disassociation that has happened, that has become so normal. It's so normal to, even in ways I remember for a long time, like simple things like keeping your shoulders up, like, and then somebody tells me, oh, but your shoulders are up, like bring them down. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
That's my normal.
Yeah, that's my
You know?
baseline.
Yeah, that's my baseline. And then when you gradually start connecting, you're like, oh, and then when you start feeling the aches and the pains, and you're like, oh, I would rather go back to that disconnect because it was easier. And I feel like that it in itself has so much. I feel like if birth was going to teach anything, birth is just bringing us back and saying, here I am, come back into this body. There is a lot of hell that we're going to go through, but there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like that's the beauty of all life. Like, I don't want to sound dramatic, but like we live and we die, you know? And we want to live and we want to be all dandy, but we don't want to acknowledge that things do come to an end. There is something, if there's anything that we're like running away from, we're running away from really feeling what's always there. There's always this sense of there's things will come to an end. People that we love will. There's so much there. And I feel like
The veil
definitely.
of birth and death is so thin. And I do
Yeah,
think that you're really onto something in that our discomfort with birth has everything to do with our discomfort with death.
I'm so happy that I met Ali and I did the sessions with her. And my final session with her, she led me to you. How the stars aligned, and how if it wasn't for, I don't know, God, then you, I don't know where I would be, Carson. From my heart, from all of our hearts, literally my family to yours, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank
I
you.
can't wait for everybody to listen to this podcast. And I'm just going to share everything that I can about you because you're truly a gift to the world. I'm so honored to know you.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. For everybody, all the information is going to be, if you're listening to this, in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be in the description box below.